ADHD reWired, episode 492. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. Today's guest is Kody Lukens. Kody was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult and very quickly became frustrated with the lack of resources made for adults with ADHD. So he set out to do something about it. He started creating educational and relatable ADHD content on social media to help people learn about their brains and feel a sense of community, and also created a magnetic stim fidget toy called Stimagz. He designed this, and these are durable, and I was very appreciative and grateful, and I was literally playing with it moments ago, and now I just lost it, which is just perfect. But I have it right here, and it's literally, I'm going to try to describe it for the podcast. It's hard. There's 12 kind of 1-inch little pieces, almost about the thickness of a pencil, and they're magnetic, and they're just kind of simple. And over the last, I don't know, when did you send these to me, Kody?
I think maybe about 2 months ago.
Since I received these, not only have they been my favorite fidget, they've also become my son's favorite fidget. And he actually commandeered one of the ones that I liked for myself, and he took it, even though I gave him his own set. So now he has two and I have one. So Kody, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been listening to this for so long. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am excited to have you here as well. And it's funny when I been doing this for as long as I have, and you've been doing a lot of content on different social channels. And you were telling me before we kicked this off that you were kind of nervous, even though you've done, I don't know how many people have seen your stuff, but so for whatever reason that may be, I'm glad you're here, and hopefully we can calm those nerves real quickly.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here as well. I think a lot of it has to come down. It comes down to whenever I post something online, usually it is very scripted. So I have time to examine every little detail and make sure that the exact points I'm wanting to convey are coming through clearly. Whereas in a live conversation, especially something, live conversation that will be published with minimal editing, I know, okay, if I say something real silly or impulsive, that I really have to be thinking about that as I'm going a bit more than I do with scripted content.
So I'll tell you this to you now because I forgot to tell you before we hit record, but we're going to leave it in just because I think sometimes it's fun to share a little bit about how the sausage is made. So I usually remember to tell my guests that if you say something and you go, your immediate thought is, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Just literally say that right into the recording because it will then be taken out.
Good to know.
Right? Versus getting the email like a week later because you've been like ruminating about the one thing you think you might have said, but you're not 100% sure and you don't quite remember where in the conversation you said it. I'll be like, yeah, that just might not get released then. So yes, kind of real time editing, and then we send it to all sound just amazing. Okay, so you were diagnosed when?
I was diagnosed in, I think, December of 2020. And
okay.
I was in college at the time, was 20 years old. And yeah, it's I guess it hasn't been that long since then, but so much has happened.
So you're 23 years old.
I am 22 years old.
22 years old. You're like a spring chicken over here. Oh my goodness. So. Okay. So you're 22. You were in school for entrepreneurship. And in school, they were encouraging you to find an issue in your life and create a solution for it.
Yeah, one of my first entrepreneurship professor is actually on my board of advisors now. He's been so incredibly helpful throughout this entire process. His name is Scott DeRosic. Just shout out Scott. And he has just been such an amazing guide. And what I say about like the entrepreneurship program, at least at the school where I went, Gonzaga, and I'm sure this is true of a lot of other entrepreneurship programs, is you really get out of it what you put into it, where it's pretty easy to show up, do your assignments, and get a good grade and graduate with a degree in entrepreneurship. But that in itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. But through the program, we had access to a gigantic board of alumni of people who are now out in the real world, who have created their own businesses or even are just engaging in entrepreneurship within larger corporations. I was one of the few people that I know that actually leveraged that. I reached out to probably 2/3 of those people and scheduled calls with them. So over the course of 2022, during my senior year of college, because that's when I was working on Stimagz, I spoke with, I don't know how many people from I don't know how many different fields. A real advantage when you're a student is people don't see you as a threat, and they're interested in imparting their knowledge onto you. Whereas now that I'm graduated, I'm in the real world, I have a lot harder time getting meetings with those same types of people. And so just being able to take stock of the resources you have at your disposal and make the best of them, even if you're not necessarily being pushed in that direction by anybody, I think that's something that really has made this journey, or I guess something that was taught to me early on of being able to look for that has made everything so much easier since then.
That's awesome. So you've been a longtime fidgeter, even before you probably knew the ADHD. And I think you shared with me when we were first talking, there was these toys that you really liked when you were a kid and you couldn't find them and you went onto eBay and bought them for like $500.
Yeah, that was actually the toy that was the inspiration for Stimagz. It was this little magnetic construction toy that you would use to, build things similar to Legos. And they were discontinued in, I think, 2008 because they weren't very well made. And so they would fall apart when kids would play with them because they were made for kids, and then kids would swallow the magnets.
Oh.
And yeah, the government cracked down on that pretty hard. So for anyone listening, Stimagz are very strictly made for adults. We do not recommend them to be used by anyone under the age of 14 because they do pose a choking hazard. But I loved those things. I used them constantly, never to build things, but always just as little fidget toys in my hands. But then they would fall apart and I'd have to use new ones. And eventually I ran out. And so I was desperate. I spent the majority of my checking account on buying more of them from eBay. And when those started to break and run out, I realized, okay, I don't have enough money to buy a lifetime supply of these. And at some point, they are just going to be gone. If I want more, I think I need to make them. And pretty early on in that process, I started to realize, oh, I likely am so interested in these because of, my neurological differences. As a result, probably other people might be interested in these as well. And that's where I guess the business side of the idea for Stimagz came from. The initial idea was just me wanting to make some so I'd have a lifetime supply for myself. But it evolved into so much more than that.
I love that. And you raised $90,000 on Kickstarter?
Yeah, just about. That was a crazy process. It went from, I think, $5,000 to $25,000 at the end of the first week of the Kickstarter. And I was so blown away.
What do you attribute that to?
That was actually exclusively due to something I do with Stimagz. The vast majority of our marketing budget goes to influencer marketing. And a lot of the people that we are working with are, I would consider, to be my colleagues and friends. They're also ADHD content creators and educators. And the people that I met through doing that on my own social media pages. And so now when I'm reaching out to them, I'm not reaching out as some random businessman. I'm reaching out as, a colleague and a friend and someone that has established how passionate they are about advocating for the ADHD and the neurodivergent community as a whole. And so that boost was almost exclusively from one video that went viral on TikTok. And it was just talking about the Stimagz Kickstarter. It was from Jeremy Andrew Davis, wonderful guy. But you can't necessarily predict how the algorithm will react to videos. Like you can have a page with 2 million followers post something and it'll just die at 18,000 views. You could have a page with 3,000 followers post something and it'll get 20 million views. It's nuts. But yeah, he had that video go crazy just over the course of one day and it skyrocketed our Kickstarter well beyond that initial funding goal. And I
Wow.
was so overwhelmed. It happened so quickly. I didn't really know how to feel. I posted a video. I've recorded my reaction live as it crossed the threshold. Apologies if I choke up here a little bit. I was just bawling in that video. I'd been working on Stimagz for so long. It had been my dream for so long. And to finally see that actually come to fruition was, I can't even describe it. I've never felt something like that in my life.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if for you, is it sort of this moment of like, oh my gosh, like I'm actually doing something that's like working and like beyond what I could even have imagined?
Yeah, it was that realization of, wow, this wasn't just in my head. People actually are interested in this. All of the insane hours I put into preparing this weren't for nothing. I sacrificed pretty much everything I had, both in terms of finances, my social life, my mental health, especially the last few weeks and months leading up to the Kickstarter to get that thing going. Because it was almost entirely self-funded. I won an entrepreneurship competition, which provided $10,000 in funding, which was incredibly helpful. But most of it came from money that I'd saved through doing video production freelancing. I started doing that when I was 15. So I've never held, I suppose, like a traditional job.
Well, good for you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to like acknowledge my privilege in that I had the ability to do that. I went to, high school where there were video production classes, and I was able to hone that skill and work on that over time. So as a result, I'd been doing it for years and years by the time I was saving up money for Stimagz. So I took on a couple of really big contracts, saved up a lot of money, and my tax returns for the year 2022, it's a whole lot of red. I did not really make any money that year because I was focusing all of my time on Stimagz and graduating college. So it's just a whole lot of burning through savings.
What's been the hardest part about this for you?
The hardest part, I think, I'm going to go ahead and knock on wood really quick. I think the hardest part is definitely behind me, of encountering that first batch of negativity surrounding the project. Because, of course, when I was reaching out to people individually, friends, family, colleagues, all of the feedback I received was overwhelmingly positive. People being excited about the idea, people saying, oh my gosh, I would totally use this. This seems awesome. And the first time I posted about it publicly, literally the first comment on it, and my first public disclosure ever, was, oh, these are literally just blank. I can't say the name. It's that toy I mentioned in the beginning, just legal reasons. I can't say it. And I was just like, oh, shoot. Like, I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. None of this matters. I'm going to fail. I've wasted my life. And then I had to take a step back and remind myself, no, if Stimagz were just that other toy, I would have just kept using that. I made these because the other ones didn't work. And that's been something I've just had to, I guess, consistently remind myself of, because in terms of form factor, they are similar, but Stimagz just have a significantly higher emphasis on build quality, durability, and actually, being used as a STEM toy rather than a construction toy. But now that we have hundreds of positive reviews and, thousands and thousands of people that have purchased Stimagz and seem to be enjoying them, I always love getting comments from people. One of the reviews we got just the other day was saying, at first I wasn't sure about these, but I went to the grocery store the other day and I was starting to get overwhelmed. I found them in a pocket and they immediately brought me back to a place of calm and let me get through that experience. And just hearing that something that I created, I think of it as my baby, is out there helping people go about their lives. That's all I ever wanted. That's exactly what I envisioned them for. And to know that other people are appreciating them in that way just means so much to me.
That's awesome. And as far as durability, I can also tell you from experience that they do survive the washing machine.
I can confirm that as well. I lost my favorite set the other day and I found them a few days later when I was folding socks.
Okay. So what I want to do is take a quick break. When we come back, I want to kind of continue talking to you about this journey of, so you kind of, to me, it's the fun part is step one. And that's like the creating something from nothing. And then you even get into like, maintenance mode. That's hard. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
All right.
We just kicked off our 33rd season of ADHD reWired's award-winning coaching and accountability groups, which means our summer groups are in full swing and ready to rock. From the ADHD reWired team and myself, we want to thank you and give you a warm welcome to all of our new members. Are you wondering what group coaching can do for you? If you missed out on our summer season or the schedule didn't work for you, and you want to get in the loop for those dates for our upcoming fall season, which starts in mid-October, head on over now to coachingrewired.com and get your name added to our fall interest list. Do you have goals or projects that excite you, but you're feeling stuck and don't know where to start? Or are those once exciting projects now just dreaded tasks on your to-do list? I know I have a few of those right now. What would be the impact if you could get started on these goals and get them to the finish line? It's one of my favorite four-letter words, done. Imagine how awesome that would feel. In ADHD reWired's coaching and accountability groups, you'll gain strategies to go from time blind to time wise. You'll learn how to manage your energy to plan your days, weeks, and months, and have your calendar reflect your goals and your priorities. I know sometimes we can get caught up in the whirlwind of everyday life and forget about ourselves and our dreams and goals, and that's where coaching can help. And you don't have to do any of this alone. Get started and stay in the loop about our fall season and learn more at coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back with Kody Lukens from Stimagz. One word, Stimagz. So let's talk about where you're at now. So you're a content creator, you're working on this business. Like, what are some of the hardest parts for you right now?
The hardest parts are definitely splitting my time. I'm also working on creating additional products right now for neurodivergent adults. And those are so exciting. I want to be working on them 24/7. I will very frequently close all of my work stuff for the day. And then an hour later, I'll find myself sitting there, in my pajamas, just like working on some new prototype that I'm just excited about. So the hardest part is definitely the procedural things of, okay, I need to keep posting content because that's important for so many different reasons for my business. And also just for my personal mission statement of just wanting to create helpful resources for neurodivergent adults, whether that's content that people can relate to and it just helps them feel a little less alone or learn more about themselves, or through the products that we're developing. I lost my train of thought. Let's see, what was I talking about? This happens so frequently. I guess one of the definite downsides of ADHD, just so much tangential thinking, which can be a positive, but also can be a negative.
Okay, so we're talking about creating content. I know that one of the things that you had shared about just some of the challenges that you are finding just around like creating your own structure and around especially pursuing longer term goals. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Something that's been incredibly helpful with that has been hiring a virtual assistant. She helped me break down my weeks into very, very segmented days, where Monday is generally my content creation day. Tuesday is when I work on marketing stuff. Wednesday is finance, logistics, and legal. Thursday is podcast related things, whether that be recording my own podcast or scheduling appearances on others. And then Friday is research and development day, also known as my second favorite day after the finance day. Oh man, spreadsheets. Wonderful.
Really?
Oh, I love spreadsheets. Oh my gosh. One of my favorite classes I ever took was just on Excel. And there was a girl sitting next to me that always wanted to copy my stuff. And she said, like, what? Like, I don't think we'll ever need to use Excel. Like, it's just not important. And I was thinking, what are you talking about? You always need Excel. It's wonderful.
I used to legit have like an anxiety, like a disorder to specifically spreadsheets. I would just get so overwhelmed and anxious by it, like just looking at all the data. And I knew that I needed to be able to, because I can't just like put information on a mind map, because that's like, not as functional when you're trying to do, magical stuff with spreadsheets. And it's just funny too, because I had one of my very first assistants a number of years ago. She was like an Excel wizard and could like make something that happens on one sheet happen on another sheet. So cool. And I'm like, all right, so explain the formula to me so I can try to do it. And but when I do it, I'm doing something wrong. So it's, yeah, people who are, especially ADHDers who like are good at and love spreadsheets. I'm like, that's a special kind of unicorn right there. And I think it's awesome.
I know that people talk about ADHD superpowers. Personally, I don't quite subscribe to that. We'll
Yeah,
go into
me
that
either.
later, maybe, but I definitely think that Excel, not necessarily an ADHD superpower, but just a life superpower. You can break anything down in there. It's nuts.
That's yeah, no, that's very cool. 'Cause, in a lot of ways, it sort of makes sense because I think one of the common traits we see with ADHD is that we tend to see patterns that maybe aren't like completely obvious to other people. When it comes to like more like estimations and like ballparking stuff and getting gist of numbers, that I'm great at. When it comes to like actual meticulous calculations, if there's any possible way to screw it up, I will.
That's fair. I triple check everything to make sure it's referencing the correct cells. That actually reminds me, I listened to the episode. It says when potential and opportunity misalign with Nate, episode 476. I was listening to that just the other day, and he was talking about in there how he came to a hard barricade with algebra. Like it wasn't quite clicking. I experienced something. So I don't know whether or not this is ADHD related. I'm hardly qualified to say whether or not it is, but I do think it's interesting. I came to a similar roadblock with calculus. I could not get it. It did not make sense to me. I had to spend hours and hours and hours in just like the math lab. It was just like a place at my school where people would go and they'd collectively work on math things, and I'd beg other students to explain things to me. But the second that and I think it came down to me not understanding the application of it, because in class, it's always, okay, like just do these numbers. Because the second I started working on, I have a few machine learning certifications that I got last year because I was just really interested in that. I don't get to use them much now, which is unfortunate, but it's so much fun. I love watching the chat GPT stuff.
Oh, I'm obsessed with ChatGPT. Like it's so cool.
But in those classes, they used a lot of calculus. And the second that I understood, like, okay, you use this, I guess, as an example, like a logarithmic function to calculate like decay or backpropagation for machine learning algorithms, it suddenly clicked. I got it immediately. Having that additional context made all of the difference. And I don't know whether or not that's an ADHD thing about how our brains are collectively wired, but who knows?
Well, I think part of it is that like when we have a clear like why behind something, especially if we're not like intuitively interested in the thing that it is, because part of the neural networks in between the prefrontal cortex of the brain and the amygdala, where a lot of the emotional stuff happens, the pathways between those networks physiologically are different. They're actually a little bit smaller in size, and the sort of the gates, if you will, between the prefrontal cortex, or the sort of the logical thinking, where all this executive function happens, and what's referred to as the hot network, right? So it's that network of between the prefrontal cortex and our amygdala, right? Sometimes the gates are like stuck shut, and sometimes they are stuck open.
Fascinating.
Right? Which is why there's a understanding of getting emotionally dysregulated. Like, you can get stuck open, but like when you talk about like hyper focus, and when someone's really passionate about something and they're driven by the emotion, and that's what can help people like yourself, like myself, create businesses, right? Because they are like really passionate about it. I think one of the biggest challenges for people with ADHD is that we tend to, I don't want to let's say lack the ability, but just for simplicity, lack the ability to do a job we don't care about just because it's a paycheck.
Yeah.
We will struggle and we won't last very long. When I used to tell my ADHD story, one of the things I would say, I had 21 jobs at the time I was 21. It's like I figured out a bunch of shit that I don't want to do. Because if it's repetitive, if it's like mundane, if it's just like, I don't know. Like I could never be a factory worker. I can't do, there's lots of things I can't do, but like when I'm interested and passionate, like I'll figure out a way, even if it's, I gotta like jump over hurdles.
That was something that I think really appealed to me about my video production freelancing is, yes, I was doing fundamentally similar things job to job for all those years, but every job was different. Every client was different. Their expectations were different. So while I didn't necessarily have 21 jobs before I was 21, I had far more than 21 clients, that is for sure. I learned a lot about the types of people that I enjoy working with, the types of projects and guidelines I enjoy working under, and everything in between.
I want to circle back to something you said you have a virtual assistant who helped you sort of create a structure for your week.
Oh, yeah.
And so the structure that you were talking about, some people call it like theming your week, right? So I've always been curious about this idea because anytime someone has suggested that to me, my immediate thought is like, well, what if Wednesday my ADHD is just winning and and Wednesday is maybe an administrative day. And then the next Wednesday, if I didn't get anything really done on that particular Wednesday, like now I'm overwhelmed because I have two kind of Wednesdays worth of stuff to do. How do you handle that?
I do my best to still keep it relatively flexible. I think of it more as guidelines than regulations. Like yesterday, I was not feeling great. And so usually Monday is my content creation day. We're recording this on a Tuesday. I didn't record anything yesterday. I didn't even script anything. I worked on a bunch of background administrative stuff. I responded to some emails, that type of thing. Whereas today, I'm feeling much better. After this podcast interview, I'll probably go record some stuff. And so just kind of swapping days and tasks around as needed and just listening to what my brain and body is telling me rather than trying to push through and just do something that I know I won't be doing my best work in at the time. Obviously, sometimes it's important, like, okay, I need to have this done by tomorrow. Even if I'm not feeling it, I need to find a way to get it done. But I try to build out my schedule to where that doesn't occur very frequently.
So how do you get stuff done when you're not, as you said, quote unquote, feeling it?
Yeah, I try to sort of bootstrap myself into it, whether that's just listening to a really exciting song on high volume and singing along with it. I did that right before this call.
What was the song?
It's Life Itself by Glass Animals. I was in their top like 0.05% of listeners last year, exclusively because I listen to them every single day in the shower. I have my like routine of like, okay, during this song, that's when I am, it's like wash my body. This song is for when I'm washing my hair. When this song ends, I switch the water to cold for the duration of the song. When that ends, I get out and, towel off, start doing my hair, whatever. It makes it a lot easier to shower, I find. It's something that always stressed me out was what music am I going to listen to in there? Because it's not very stimulating. And so it can be hard to justify stepping away from playing video games or watching TV or something to go take a shower because it's just like, oh, that's not nearly as fun. And trying to build that structure has definitely been helpful.
I think that having a playlist to anchor parts of your routine is such a great idea. I love that.
Thank you.
So what about when you're just feeling like, I don't know, we all go through these periods where we're just like, even though like we still want to do the things that we're doing, but we also get these periods where it's like activation becomes really hard. And it's just like, staring at the wall seems like a little bit more doable today.
I try to, as I mentioned, just listen to my body and brain. If I'm having a day like that and I know, okay, nothing's going to get done, I will just take the day off. And I try to, and that is something that once again, am privileged to be able to do. I am my own boss in all of the different ventures that I'm involved in. So I have the ability to do that and it's not going to negatively affect anything necessarily. I try to go and just spend as much of the day outside as I can. So I was experiencing something like that last, I think Tuesday, and I ended up just walking to my therapy appointment, which was like 1.5 miles instead of driving. I did rock climbing for the first time with a friend that I hadn't seen in a while. And then I walked like, I think 6 miles round trip to a meeting I had downtown and back, made sure to eat 3 meals. I try to do as much as I can to give my body anything it might have possibly been lacking and, getting a full night's sleep after so that the next day, hopefully my brain would be in a position to where it was more able to perform those tasks that I neglected the day before.
And how do you maintain just your sort of spirits as you're going through? Because when you're the owner, it's kind of all on you.
Yeah, something that consistently motivates me day to day is creating things that I know will be helpful for people. So if I'm ever flagging in motivation, I can look back on once again those reviews and comments from people saying these are so helpful in my daily life, and reflecting on okay, even if I might not be feeling up to it today, work that I put in now, rather than waiting until next week or next month or next year, could potentially benefit a lot more people than myself in a shorter frame of time, including myself. It helps that I am, I guess, my business's target market. Anything that I am interested in as a result of perhaps like ADHD sensory sensitivities or noise sensitivities or anything else also applies to a significantly broader market. And something that I'm really trying to focus in on is creating things of quality rather than just a whole lot of things. I feel like there are plenty of fidget toys out there. There are plenty of weighted blankets out there, noise reduction earplugs, you name it. There's a million of them, but it can be so difficult to find ones that are actually made with quality in mind and with ADHD or neurodivergent needs in mind. A lot of them, it feels like, are just made of the cheapest possible materials to turn a profit and take advantage of the ADHD in quotes trend that has been, I guess, publicized the last few years. It's definitely gained a lot of prominence, as I'm sure you've noticed with the podcast as well. And just trying day after day to make things that are helpful for people.
So you've been in business now for 2 years?
No, we've been in business for about 10, 11 weeks.
Oh my gosh, it is that new. It is a baby.
Yeah, it's very new.
Okay. So you've been in business now for about 11 weeks. You're still kind of in some ways like in your sprint. This is still like the first chapter, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're releasing, by the time this episode comes out, we may have already released our pastel line, which we're really excited about. We have 6, I guess, initial colors that launched with the Kickstarter. Those are the ones we're still selling. And the pastels, a lot of people have been asking for them. So we're super excited to be able to provide that. And one of the most difficult parts, I guess you're right, we are still in a way in that sprint. We don't have months or years of sales data to look back on to project inventory calculations. So part of what I've been doing so much in Excel is just trying to begin to figure out how much of these things did we order from the manufacturer, especially because we've booked some rather, I guess, like high ticket influencers that haven't posted for us yet. And they'll be posting with the pastels. We have no idea what kind of volume they're going to drive, especially because once again, they could have a video that does 18,000 views. It could do 20 million views. And the differential between those two is so staggering. Yeah. It's impossible to plan for. Because if you plan for, okay, highest case scenario, everyone's video goes viral, you're spending $100,000 on inventory. Whereas if you plan, okay, let's plan conservatively, get enough inventory that we're confident we can sell within the time frame that we set. One single video could sell you out if it potentially goes viral. So when I see these companies, because we've experienced, I guess it's probably fine if I share this. Maybe my advisors will yell at me, but it's probably fine. Our first month in business, we experienced, I think, roughly 45% growth, like month to month. And then our second to third month, we experienced like 75% growth in sales. And so we're trying to think like, okay, does that trend continue? Are we going to see another, like, is it going to keep going up? Are we going to see double sales this upcoming month? In which case we'll just be sold out immediately, or will it go back down? It's so difficult to predict.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because there's definitely lots of uncertainty. And
and there's no one right answer. It's just sort of hedging your bets on what you think is perhaps the most likely scenario and what leaves other resources open for you to pursue, I suppose, other new product development or different marketing strategies versus tying all of your assets up in inventory and just hoping that something goes viral.
I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll have a few minutes when we come back. But I want to talk about kind of what's ahead for you. And, when you first told me that you wanted to be on the podcast, one of the things you mentioned was I wanted to talk about how to deal with failure. And so I'm just wondering if you even, is there been enough time yet for you to experience that with the business? So we'll answer that when we come back. Do you constantly forget where you parked your car? Do you find yourself driving and suddenly think, uh-oh, did I forget to lock the door? And how many times have you locked your keys in the car? Maybe so many that you've become an expert lock picker? For the ADHD reWired community, we get it. It is a struggle. Well, not anymore. Get ready for the ride of your life. Drumroll, please. The Ford Focus. That's Ford with a PH, like the band Fish. The first car designed exclusively for adults with ADHD. Engineered with patented forget-me-not technology, the Ford Focus syncs with your smartphone to remember your parking spot. No more wandering aimlessly in the parking lot. And the voice will even say, "You've reached your destination," just in case you forgot where you're going. But that's not all. The Ford Focus has a built-in "did I do that" system. Leave your car without locking the door? Your Focus will send you an alert to your phone. Your car also won't even let you lock your keys in the car ever again. Try to lock it with your keys still in the car. Your focus will let you know. Leave your coffee on the roof, or maybe your child. Your focus will let you know, and it won't even let you drive off. And oh, those naughty keys. We know how they like to play hide and seek, especially when you're running late. So we created Key Keeper. Just whistle and your keys will beep right back at you. And if you're tired of being embarrassed when you feel like your car has become a garbage can on wheels, the Ford Focus uses AI technology to scan your space and can organize the items in your car using its built-in mini robots that can lift items up to 25 pounds. Do you eat in your car and never seem to find time to vacuum? You'll never need to vacuum your car again. With the most advanced vacuum robotics technology, your car will get vacuumed every time you park your car. Ford Focus is designed to help you stay, focused. The innovative mindfulness mode transforms your car into a Zen space with optional ambient noises, calming visuals on your screen, and even seat vibrations that sync with your breathing. Plus, every model of the Focus comes with eye tracking technology and it will alert you when you've lost your focus. Plus, with the freedom to focus mode, cell phones will not work inside your car when the car is moving. The Ford Focus, built for the ADHD rewired adult, because you're not scatterbrained, you're just driven by a motor. And with your brand new Focus, you'll be as focused as a dog waiting for you to throw that tennis ball. Ford Focus, drive with a clear mind. And even though we might wish this actually would exist, it doesn't. But what does exist is real support for ADHD. We've got plenty of places and spaces to check out. You can learn about our coaching and accountability groups at coachingrewired.com. Check out our ADHD-friendly body doubling community at adultstudyhall.com, where you can have access to on-demand, real-time accountability and themed and guided co-working sessions. Or you can support us on Patreon over at adhdrewired.com/Patreon. Did you know you can listen to this podcast with full uninterrupted episodes with announcements at the end of each show when you become a patron at just $5 a month or more, or you can get a taste of group coaching at $25 a month or more for our monthly coaching calls that we do every fourth Tuesday of the month. And if you want answers, tips, and tricks to your burning ADHD-related questions, then head on over to ADHDrewired.com/events to register for our monthly live Q&A that happens every second Tuesday of the month. Go to ADHDrewired.com to find it all. That's ADHDrewired.com. And thanks for listening. All right, we are back. So, as I mentioned right before this break, that when I was asked my potential guests, why they want to be on the podcast, you shared that as a small business owner with ADHD and content creator, you wanted to talk about structure and pursuing long-term goals and how to deal with failure.
I wish that I had remembered that I wrote that in, because I don't think I've actually thought about that in a while. Completely forgot.
That's never happened before.
Yeah. I guess that there have been a few somewhat large failings. I haven't had, I know a lot of, there's a stat in entrepreneurship. It's like the first, I don't remember what it is, but the first several businesses that someone creates generally fail, and they have to fail a few times before they learn enough lessons to create something that works. I definitely struggle with OCD. I am trying to, every day is a struggle with that for sure. And part of that is perfectionism. I obsess over things being perfect or as close to it as humanly possible, which is why I spent those insane hours on the Kickstarter. But I think that's also the only thing that really enabled it to succeed. If I hadn't been so adamant about inspecting every single detail so many times, I don't think that I could have pulled that off, at least in the time span that I did and at the age and experience level that I'm at. I guess some of the other failures, I already kind of mentioned it in terms of people initially not, like that first comment I got on the first public disclosure being negative definitely kind of shattered me, because when you tie so much of your self-worth into your project, when people don't like it, it feels like a personal attack on you. Mm-hmm. So it can be very difficult to separate your self-worth and your identity from your project and the success or failure of it, while still maintaining that passion that drives you to actually work on that project. And that's been a hard lesson that I'm still continually learning. I think that this probably isn't a good thing to recommend, but it's what I've experienced. Whenever I am feeling like I'm lacking in internal validation, I'll just read some of those reviews or comments of people saying how beneficial they are in their lives. And that gives me the, I guess, suppose, external validation fuel for my internal validation, to where like, okay, I'm good for the next couple of weeks. Like I'll check in on these later. On Kickstarter, I'd sort of built it up in my mind of, are you familiar with Fidget Cube?
Mm-hmm.
They were at the time, I think it was in 2014, 2015, they were one of the largest Kickstarters of all time back then. I think they raised like $6.4 million or something.
Mm.
So I had somewhere in the back of my head, like, oh, okay, Stimagz we're going to pass that. It's going to be crazy. And then on the first day, it got maybe $3,000 backed. And I felt like I'd failed somehow. And it wasn't this devastating, crushing feeling, but I just felt kind of empty and numb. And that feeling continued for the next several months. It took me a long time, not necessarily because of that, but I think it was also just when I pressed go, I was so overwhelmed with emotions. When the Kickstarter funded a few days later, I was so overwhelmed with emotions. But for the rest of that time, I don't think I had fully processed like, yeah, it made it. I pressed go, it's done, it's out there. Because there was just so much leading up to it. It didn't feel like something that was actually real. Almost like maybe if you're looking forward to a trip for a long time and you're planning it and you're so excited about it, it's all you can think about. And when you get there, it's not even that it's not quite what you expected. It's just going to be maybe slightly different and it just feels weird. I don't quite know how to explain it. You might be right that maybe not quite enough time has passed before I'm able to truly reflect on that. But I suppose I am lucky in that all of my initial failings have been things that have been recoverable. I accidentally, I guess, wasted a lot of money with that first manufacturer I mentioned, and they wasted a lot of my time. But I was able to, I guess.
What'd you learn from that?
Exactly. Yeah, I learned from that. Okay, here are some things that are important to talk about when negotiating with manufacturers. Here's roughly the budget that I should expect for new product development. Here is the timeline and the communication standards, quality standards, and just being able to quickly adapt and learn from those failures. There's an expression that I hear thrown around a lot of like fail hard and fail fast, or like fail fast and fail frequently, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I definitely subscribe to that to a degree. Never put yourself in a position to where if you, I guess this is hypocritical, but never put yourself in a position to where if you fail, you're toast. Always have a backup plan and a backup plan and a backup plan, contingencies for everything. Even if you don't necessarily have them fully planned out, know that you'll be able to find a way around it. And being able to think creatively and outside of the box, I suppose, is definitely one of the things that is most discussed as a strength of ADHD. And I definitely think that definitely rings true, at least for me.
Mm. We're almost out of time here. I wanted to ask you first. Can you tell us your three like favorite or currently most used productivity tools?
Yeah, I use Trello right now. Truthfully, I don't really like it. It's not. I feel like there's so many of those tools. There, there's Slack, there's Asana, there's Trello, there's Notion, there's Motion, there's so many of those different things. None of them do quite what I want them to, where I want something more in depth than Trello, but less like focused and segmented than Monday. I don't know if I actually have good recommendations for productivity tools. If anyone else has them, I will gladly take them.
Okay, so currently you're getting by with Trello.
Yeah, well, I guess taking a step back from, I guess, explicit productivity tools, my Stimagz are incredibly helpful. I've been using them this entire call. They have not left my hand, as I do. Yeah, wonderful. As I do throughout pretty much every day. I never don't have them on me. And it's so helpful for getting to that stimulation baseline where, there's so many different things you can do with them. There's not just one specific pattern or routine where if I need a little less stimulation, maybe I'll just sort of roll them between my fingers versus if I need a little more, I'll do a bit more of a complicated routine. And that's one of the benefits of being both physically and cognitively stimulating as opposed to just physically, which is what a lot of other fidget toys are. For example, fidget spinner, you just spin it. I guess, Infinity cubes are actually pretty cool, but they're very loud.
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't rat on those. I like them. And I use a lot of other fidget toys too. Like I I have different things for different moods. I guess I use the Ono roller a lot. I've met the guy who created those several times. You should have him on. He's really cool. But
what is it? So those are like three magnetic circles.
no, it's this roller. I don't know how well you can see it on the video here, but it's just two cylinders that are attached with little.
It almost looks like a bicycle pedal, sort of.
Yeah. But just having a repertoire of fidget tools, if you will, for different stimulation needs is incredibly helpful. Same thing with here's one that I do a lot, including right now. I segment my music to different tasks. So I like to tie as many triggers. I like to tie as many triggers to certain tasks as I can. For example, I only wear this shirt when I have like a big interview or I guess a big day going on. It helps get me in that productive, top of my game state of mind, I suppose. These are the shoes that I wear every day when I work, even though I could be wearing other shoes. I listen to lo-fi music when I'm doing interviews and no other times. Actually, I did listen to music when I was in class. I got an accommodation for that.
I do want to share with listeners that you shared something with me that I have actually never heard before, because you had asked me if I ever listened to music while doing a podcast interview. And I was like, that had never even occurred to me. But then I was sharing with you before we hit record that like, I've never thought of that, but I've always wanted to have like almost like a 2-channel mixer in my car, or I can like listen to like, NPR or a podcast and have music in the background behind that. And where I can like kind of control how like the levels for each. So it's not much different than what you're doing. Because you said lo-fi music right now playing in your headphones while we've been doing this interview.
Oh yeah, this whole time.
That's wild. I love it.
I'll send you my playlist. You can try it out.
Awesome. What about calendar? You digital? What do you use?
Yeah, I've recently got a Calendly that has been super helpful of just in terms of keeping track of when I'm available for things. I have a bad habit of sending an email saying, let me know your availability and we'll schedule something. And then they send back their availability. And by the time I can muster myself to look at my calendar, compare with other emails that I've sent regarding availability to people, put it in my calendar, the dates they've recommended have already passed. So getting a Calendly was super helpful in terms of I can just send this out and I have it set so there's like a 30-minute block before and after every meeting. So I don't have back-to-back stuff. I have time to switch my context because
it allows you to front load the executive functions by having these scheduling tools. I use Schedule once. It's kind of same idea. I think for anyone listening, if you schedule things regularly and you're doing it over email, knock it off. Get one of these tools. It is going to make your life so much easier.
And I'm not sure why I do this. I think it just helps reduce anxiety of being recorded. So maybe this is helpful for people in Zoom calls. I always drag a window over half of the video. So Eric, I can see half of your face right now. It's split down the middle. Same with me. It helps reduce that anxiety. It makes it feel less like a professional thing. Like, yeah, I'm on a call right now. I'm talking to a really cool person, or if like you're on a call with your boss or something. It's almost like that trick they tell you in middle school or high school of like, imagine everyone in your class is like wearing a funny hat or something like that. And it helps take away some of that anxiety surrounding a presentation.
All right. Well, awesome.
Super random.
No, I sometimes I love the random tools because it's people sometimes think that talking generalities, you'll reach more people, and I completely disagree with that. I gotta get really specific, and then you can reach more people. Right? Okay. Final thoughts. What would you want other listeners to hear? And then give them all your contact information and how they can get some of these awesome Stimagz.
Yeah. Final thoughts. I've always been bad at stuff like this. Whenever someone asks me a question, like, tell me about yourself, I say, well, I was born in Seattle. I went to school, and I don't know what to say. It's so open-ended. So I guess closing thoughts, I'll just say, thank you so much for having me. If anyone else is interested in learning more about me or my journey to get here, you can check me out at Kody Lukens, KodyLukens. I'm on pretty much every social media platform except for Twitter. I've never really been able to get onto that one. And if you're interested in Stimagz, the magnetic stim toy we've been talking about this whole call, you can get them at stimagz.com. That is STIMAGZ.com. we also own pretty much every misspelling of it at this point. So if you type in anything related to Stimagz or anything like that, our ad should pop up.
That's perfect. I love that. All right. Kody Lukens, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And we wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you're a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and the Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, We can do hard things, and we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.